Are you originally from Florida?
No, I was born in California, but I've lived several different states. But I've been to, this is my second time in Florida. I was in Florida for about 8 or 9 years before we went to North Carolina for 10.
Okay.
Now
And
I'm back on the other side.
did your evolution into becoming a dog trainer start in North Carolina?
Yes. So that is where I became a student at Cold Nose College with my first puppy as an adult. And that is where I took every class I could and was bitten by the bug and decided to become a trainer. I was already in the vet world as a veterinary assistant, so it was kind of a natural transition, I guess.
Did you have a particular dog or animal that made you want to delve in more into animal behavior, or was it from your working at the vet?
It was probably working at the vet and seeing so many guardians with animals that were either fearful. Obviously, most are at least anxious, if not fearful, at the vet, and or needing to be muzzled for different reasons. I myself did eventually adopt or acquire a dog that had some significant behavioral issues, but that wasn't, I was already in dog training at the time, so it wasn't the catalyst. I think it was just seeing so many people that needed help and weren't sure how to get it or what to do.
And did you start your business in North Carolina, or did you move to Florida specifically to start your dog training business?
I became a trainer. I apprenticed and studied under Brad and Lisa Wagner at Cold Nose College, became a lead trainer for them, teaching classes, and also eventually doing behavior modification in-home private training. Went back to school to obtain a degree in animal-assisted interaction while I was there in North Carolina. And when my husband and I decided to move to Florida, I knew that I wanted to continue to do what I was doing, and I also knew how much I adored working under the Cold Nose College umbrella and with the people that I worked with at the time, Brad and Lisa. So we kind of put our heads together and came up with a plan where I could continue to work as part of Cold Nose College, but I do now own my own affiliate of the company down here in Florida.
How has the growth of the business gone? Have you faced any particular challenges, or has it been easier or harder than you imagined?
The growth has been good. I would say it's probably been, I'm not sure what I expected or what I was thinking I was expecting, but I would say it's probably better than expected. Obviously, where I live currently in Florida, as far as local clients, there's a larger pool of clients as opposed to a more rural mountainous area, which is where I moved from. So there's lots of families and retired people and people who are here half the year, as we refer to them as snowbirds. So locally, I have, I guess I would just say a larger opportunities, more people, more populated area than I moved from in North Carolina. And now that I do so much training online, the remote part of training just makes it so easy to help so many more people, regardless of where they're located.
In terms of your evolution as an animal behavior consultant and trainer, one thing that I've been asking all the trainers is, what do you feel separates, well, I call all of you professional trainers, but what do you feel separates someone like yourself who has, really focused on education and learning a lot about animal behavior, as opposed to someone who perhaps watches one dog training video, perhaps not using the best methodologies, and then the next day they hang out a sign proclaiming that they're a dog trainer?
Yes, so that's an unfortunate and I feel very scary part of our business and our industry, and I do really hope that that changes one day. I'm definitely in favor of more regulation in our industry, more qualification, more education. I find it very interesting, some of the industries or lines of work that require some type of licensing or registration, you know, a barber or a hairstylist, or, you know, not that they don't, you know, that they're any less than anyone else, but it just kind of boggles the mind that, you know, we as trainers, we're working with another species who does not speak the same language, so doesn't communicate in the same way, and can very easily cause serious injury and even death if it's serious enough of an issue. So the fact that there is no regulation is a little frightening when, you know, when thought of in that perspective. But as far as what sets us apart, I think just like with any industry, when you seek out a professional, I think any one of us would be seeking someone with the passion to do what they do and the drive to learn as much as possible about what they do. So it's wonderful to have a passion. It's wonderful to have an interest. It's wonderful to like what you do or even love what you do. But if you don't, I believe, if you don't educate yourself and continue to keep up on the latest information, the latest scientific research and evidence and trends and methodologies, I think that that's one of the most important aspects of any line of work, is that you are keeping yourself up to date with what is, you know, what is out there and what is most helpful for your client, in this case being the dog and the guardian.
Someone was at home and they wanted to, or they needed to hire a trainer for their pet, whether it's a dog or a bird or a cat. Are there some things that they should specifically look out for, maybe on the trainer's website, or particular wording or anything that could help guide them towards perhaps a more science-based or positive-based trainer?
Yes, and even that I think is getting tricky sometimes, because those who are a bit still unscrupulous, I guess, for lack of a better term, are finding out about some of these words and trying to use them in ways that we wish they wouldn't. However, that being said, I guess I would certainly say, you know, things to look for would be the affiliations of national organizations, being a professional member of something like APDT, as an example, or PPG, which is the Pet Professional Guild. All of the letters, the alphabet behind some of our names, you know, as trainers, it really confuses people as far as what those certifications mean, but they are very important, and they do mean that we've taken a lot of time, effort, energy, and financial resources to educate ourselves and gain these qualifications. So I do think they're more important than most people realize. Specifically, look out for, I think sometimes it's easier if you go on a website to notice the words or terms that you should stay away from, because those, you know, other people with less qualifications are going to use words such as, you know, alpha and dominance and leadership, or is kind of tossed around, and energy, and you know, there's a lot of words. There's like red flag words for us as professional trainers that we just know if we see that on a website, that's not the methodology that we would, you know, or recommend or advise.
But I always try to tell Terry, well, look how much opportunity there is for education.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a dripping of education, one person at a time, one client at a time, and we, you know, I know we're making a difference. I know collectively it has come far. We have a lot more work to do, but we've come far in educating the public of, you know, what to look out for and what to ask, what kinds of questions to ask. I do wish that people would ask more questions. Similarly to hiring a daycare facility or a babysitter for their child. If I were the mother, I would be asking very pointed questions, specific questions about how would you handle this if my child did this, or what would you do in this situation? I think guardians of dogs, pets in general, have every right to ask those kinds of questions before ever hiring someone and assuming that the person will do the thing that they would feel comfortable with.
Could you recommend like 3 or 4 basic questions that they might want to ask before letting their dog stay there?
Absolutely. First of all, if anytime you're going to allow or ask that your dog stay anywhere without you present, I believe that you should request to be given a tour of the entire facility, not just the parts they want you to see, not just the parts that are pretty out front and, you know, well maintained for the clients. If they're comfortable with you seeing every part of their facility, that speaks volumes, first of all. Whether it's a daycare facility, a grooming facility, a veterinary clinic, there should be no off limit. I say, okay, veterinary clinic, maybe the surgery, maybe the surgery room off limits for understandable reasons, but basically everything else should be allowed to be seen by the client if they're leaving their pet in your care. And certainly, I think one of the most important questions is, if my dog, and you can word it in any way that you feel comfortable, but basically, if my dog were misbehaving in your eyes, how would you handle that? Because there are some facilities who don't necessarily tell people up front that they are using things like squirt bottles or air horns, or God forbid, actually putting shock collars on people's dogs without telling them, you know, as soon as they leave, that's how they handle the situation. So people need to know what is being done, what is being used. If X happens, how will you handle it? That's probably the most important question of all. And if even having something in writing, you know, whatever contract you sign, I think the contract with the facility should have something in writing about how they would handle and how they would not, what they would not use in a situation like that.
In your areas of training, do you have any specialties that you focus on, like basic obedience or separation issues or anything like that?
I do. So I have a specialty certification in separation anxiety. So a big bulk of my work is separation anxiety, isolation distress, just generalized anxiety and fear-based issues. I do tend to be kind of drawn, my heart is drawn to those dogs who are fearful and anxious of the world around them, and being able to watch them slowly come out of their shell and realize that there are people in the world they can trust, and there are places in the world they can trust and have fun. Dogs who may have never played with a toy before, learning how to play for the first time. Just being able to learn how to be a dog as opposed to be this frightened shell of, you know, of a dog. That's something that that really, you know, warms my heart, and I tend to work a lot with. I do love, of course, to work with puppies and basic obedience and teaching and molding, you know, them for the very first time, teaching all of the foundation behaviors and fun, you know, little tricks for them to entertain their guardians and their families with. So my specialties would be the fear, anxiety, separation component, and basic obedience and foundation behaviors.
Do you have one particular extremely gratifying case that sort of sticks out, and when you have a tough day, maybe you think back on that particular situation where your behavior information was able to help an animal?
Sure. Well, actually, just recently, just last week, I had one of those moments that, you know, every trainer dreams of. And while it may not seem like a big deal to a lot of people, I'm currently working with a 7.5-year-old Basset Hound, whose family, for their own reasons, hadn't received or hadn't hired a trainer and hadn't worked with the dog in training in any aspect up until now. So as you can imagine, a 7.5-year-old Basset Hound can be pretty set in his ways as far as, you know, just being very comfortable and used to the way things are. And, you know, here I am walking in, changing things and trying to teach him to do things a different way. And two of their biggest issues with this dog were loose leash walking, so walking politely on leash without pulling them down the sidewalk, nose to the ground, like a Basset Hound usually is, and also recall, the call to come. So his name is Danger, and Danger would ignore his mom pretty much at any moment when she called his name, there was no connection, there was no association, there was no real true reinforcement history there. So he had really no reason or no understanding as to why to pay attention to his name until he wanted to, basically. And I got a text the other evening from the mother after having worked with them for several sessions, and she was beside herself with excitement and joy because she had taken Danger to a small, intimate dog park for the first time that he was visiting that park. And she was excited because when she called his name, he came running. So he came running in a brand new environment where he had never been before. So obviously lots of neat smells for him. In the presence of other dogs and in the presence of other people, which is basically like the highest level of distraction you can have for any dog to actually respond to their name and come when called. So she texted me that evening just absolutely thrilled about Danger's progress. So it's those little tiny, moments that it makes such a big difference to the guardian. And she and her dog had a wonderful experience, and it warms my heart to know that I'm part of that and have helped them along their journey.
Your development as a trainer, have you had anybody in particular, or maybe a couple of people who have sort of mentored you or helped you along your path?
Absolutely. I don't think I could have gotten anywhere near where I am today without the help of mentors. So first and foremost, obviously, Brad and Lisa Wagner, who were my first, they were my teachers when I was a student in a dog training class, and quickly became my mentors. And as I said earlier, I apprenticed under them for a year, kind of learning the ropes of how to become a trainer and how to help guide clients. I've also taken Pat Miller Peaceable Paws Academies in Maryland, and Milena DiMartini Price is one of my amazing mentors through the separation anxiety course is where I met her. Of course, I try my best to attend as many conferences and educational opportunities as possible. So I've had the pleasure of learning from some of the greatest, trainers and behavior professionals, Ken Ramirez and Kay Lawrence and Chirag Patel, and list goes on. But anytime I'm able to, I try my best to learn from, everyone else and incorporate that into my training.
And how about if someone was interested in learning the basics of animal behavior to maybe work with their dog at home? Are there any sort of books for the common layman that come to mind that maybe folks might want to check out?
Oh, goodness, yes. So I do always provide a list of recommended resources to all of my clients. I know some people have a bit more time to read than others, but nowadays, especially since you can also do audiobooks, I think for the majority of us, we can fit in at least a little bit of time learning from a book, whether it's reading or listening. Honestly, I try to, depending on the situation, I try to guide my clients to the individual book or maybe two books that would be the most helpful for their situation. So obviously if I'm working with a fearful dog, there might be From Fearful to Fear-Free by Dr. Marty Becker. Some dogs if I'm working with a reactive dog or a dog that has shown aggressive displays, especially while outside, for instance, on a leash walk, amazing book by Annie Phoenix called The Midnight Dog Walkers.